My beloved child, stop scrolling and remain here for a moment, because what you are about to hear did not reach you by accident. Something unfolded last night while the world around you appeared quiet, and although you were not sitting at that table, your presence was felt in every pause, every unfinished sentence, and every moment when your soulmate looked away. Heaven has brought you here because the truth behind that dinner date is not what it first appears to be. Do not rush away. Stay until the end, because the person sitting across from your soulmate was someone you would never expect, and the reason for that meeting is connected to a decision that may soon change everything between you. You may have sensed something unusual before you heard these words. Perhaps your heart became restless without explanation. Perhaps a memory of this person returned suddenly, even though you were trying to focus on something else. Maybe you felt a strange heaviness in the evening, followed by an unexpected calm, as though an invisible conversation had taken place around your name. My child, your spirit noticed what your eyes could not see. There are moments when two souls remain connected across distance, silence, confusion, and even the appearance of moving on. Last night was one of those moments. Your soulmate prepared for that dinner with more thought than they wanted anyone to know. They changed their clothes more than once. They stood in front of a mirror, not because they were excited about impressing the person they were meeting, but because they were trying to understand the expression on their own face. There was uncertainty there. There was resistance. And beneath it all, there was a truth they had been avoiding for far too long. They told themselves it was only dinner. They told themselves the meeting meant nothing. They told themselves they had every right to sit across from someone new, to laugh, to speak, to pretend that the past no longer had power over them. But the moment they left their home, your memory followed. Do not misunderstand what heaven is revealing. This was not a night in which your soulmate forgot you. It was a night in which they discovered how deeply they had failed to forget you. Every mile they traveled toward that restaurant made something inside them more uncomfortable. The closer they came to that table, the clearer your face became in their mind. They remembered small things they had tried to bury, the way you listened when they could not explain themselves, the way your energy changed a room, the way silence with you once felt more honest than conversation with anyone else. Still, they continued. There was a reason they believed they had to attend this dinner. Someone had encouraged them. Someone had said it was time to open their heart again. Someone had suggested that they needed clarity. And your soulmate, tired of wrestling with their own emotions, agreed. They hoped one evening might settle the questions they had been carrying. They hoped the person waiting for them could prove that another path was possible. But heaven sometimes allows a person to walk toward the wrong table so they can finally recognize where their heart truly belongs. When your soulmate arrived, the restaurant was filled with soft music and low golden light. People spoke quietly around them. Glasses touched. Chairs moved. Laughter rose from distant tables. Everything seemed ordinary, yet nothing inside your soulmate felt ordinary. Their eyes searched the room, and for one breathless second, they imagined seeing you. That moment startled them. They had not expected to look for you. They had not expected their heart to react before their mind could stop it. Then they saw the person they had come to meet. And this is where the truth begins to turn. Their date was not a stranger. The person sitting at that table already knew something about you. Stay here, my child, because this is the detail your soul was brought to hear. Your soulmate did not simply meet someone who wanted their attention. They met someone who had already heard your name. Someone who had noticed the way your soulmate changed whenever you were mentioned. Someone who understood that this dinner was not beginning with an empty heart, but with a heart already occupied by a connection that had never truly ended. Your soulmate sat down and tried to appear calm. They exchanged greetings. They offered a careful smile. The conversation began with simple questions about work, plans, interests, and life. From the outside, it looked like a normal dinner date. But underneath the polite words, another conversation was happening. Your soulmate was comparing everything. The sound of this person's laughter was compared to yours. The way this person asked questions was compared to the way you once understood without asking. Even the pauses were compared. And with every comparison, your soulmate became more aware of the space you still held inside them. The person across the table noticed. At first, they said nothing. They watched your soulmate glance at their phone, even when no message had arrived. They noticed how your soulmate became distant whenever the conversation turned toward love. They saw the hesitation when they asked whether your soulmate had truly moved on from anyone important. Your soulmate answered too quickly. Yes. But their eyes said something else. The date leaned back slightly, studying them. A silence formed between them that lasted only a few seconds, yet within that silence, something hidden began to rise. Your soulmate felt exposed. They looked down at the menu, even though they had already chosen their meal. They shifted in their chair. They attempted to change the subject. But the person across from them did not allow the truth to disappear. They asked, "Then why do you look like you are waiting for someone else?" My child, those words entered your soulmate's heart like a key turning in a locked door. For a moment, they could not speak. They wanted to laugh it away. They wanted to deny it. They wanted to say the evening was simply strange and they were tired. Yet your name had already begun to rise within them. Not on their lips, but in the place where honesty can no longer be silenced. Do not skip what comes next, because the person sitting across from your soulmate was not there merely to compete for their affection. They had a connection to a conversation that happened days before. A conversation in which your soulmate had spoken about you without realizing how much they were revealing. They had described someone who challenged them. Someone who saw through them. Someone whose absence felt louder than the presence of others. They never said they were still in love. They never admitted they were waiting. But every word carried the shape of you. The date had listened. And last night, they came prepared to ask the question your soulmate had been avoiding. Is this dinner about getting to know me, they asked softly, or is it about proving something to the person you cannot forget? The question changed the atmosphere at the table. Your soulmate's hand became still beside their glass. Their expression shifted. All the practiced confidence left their face. For the first time that night, they stopped pretending. They looked toward the window, where the reflection of the restaurant lights floated against the darkness. And in that reflection, they saw not the person sitting across from them, but the version of themselves they had become since losing closeness with you. They saw their pride. They saw their fear. They saw the moments when they could have spoken but chose silence. They remembered the message they almost sent. The apology they rewrote and deleted. The night they opened your photograph, stared at it, and closed it again because the emotions were too difficult to face. Last night, everything they had hidden returned at once. And the date knew. This person had not brought your soulmate there to humiliate them. They had not come to create drama. In fact, their next words were spoken with a calmness that made the truth even more powerful. They said, "I do not want to be chosen because you are afraid to return to the one you really love." Your soulmate looked up. Something inside them broke open. Understand this, my child. Sometimes the most unexpected messenger is not an angel appearing in light, but a human being willing to speak the truth at the exact moment a soul is ready to hear it. Last night, the person across from your soulmate became such a messenger. They saw what your soulmate had refused to see. They recognized that no new connection could grow honestly while your soulmate was still emotionally standing at your door. Your soulmate tried to explain. They said things between you were complicated. They said too much time had passed. They said they did not know whether you would even want to hear from them. But with every explanation, the date became more certain. You are not over them, the person said. Your soulmate lowered their eyes. They did not deny it this time. This was the first shocking revelation of the night, but it was not the greatest one. The greatest revelation came when the person across the table said your name. Yes, my child. They knew your name. Your soulmate froze. For several seconds, the sounds of the restaurant seemed to disappear around them. They stared across the table, wondering how much had been shared and by whom. Their first reaction was confusion. Their second was fear. Their third was something far deeper, the realization that they had spoken about you more often than they remembered. The date explained that your soulmate had mentioned you before. Not once, but repeatedly. Sometimes directly. Sometimes through stories. Sometimes without using your name at all. Yet the same person appeared in every memory. The one who made them feel seen. The one they hurt through silence. The one they could not replace. Your soulmate had carried you into every conversation without recognizing it. And last night, someone finally held up the mirror. My child, this is why your energy may have felt unsettled. A truth about you was being spoken in a room where you were physically absent. Your name rested between two people at a dinner table, but the emotion connected to that name belonged entirely to your soulmate. They could no longer hide behind distractions, pride, or the belief that time alone would erase what remained unfinished. The meal arrived, but neither of them had much appetite. Your soulmate stared at the plate before them. Their thoughts were no longer in the restaurant. They were with you. They wondered what you were doing at that exact moment. They wondered whether you had finally let go. They wondered whether someone else had begun to appreciate what they had failed to protect. That thought disturbed them more than they expected. The possibility of you moving forward had always existed, but last night it became real. They imagined another person hearing your laughter, receiving your messages, learning the small details that once belonged only to them. They imagined someone else being brave enough to choose you openly. And suddenly, the dinner date no longer felt like proof that they had moved on. It felt like proof that they might lose you. Stay until the end, because the person across the table then said something that your soulmate will not forget. They said, "Maybe you did not come here because you wanted me. Maybe you came here because you were hoping this evening would make your feelings for them disappear." Your soulmate looked away again. Their silence answered. The date continued, but they did not disappear, did they? This time, your soulmate whispered, "No." One word. One honest word after so much avoidance. Heaven heard it. Your soulmate heard it. And somewhere within your own spirit, you may have felt a sudden shift without knowing why. That "no" was not merely an answer about the dinner. It was a confession that the connection between you had survived every attempt to bury it. It survived distance. It survived silence. It survived misunderstandings. It even survived the possibility of another person sitting across from them in candlelight. But do not mistake this revelation as a promise that everything will happen without courage. Feelings may remain, but choices determine what becomes real. Heaven is showing you the movement within their heart, not asking you to abandon your wisdom. You are not being called to chase. You are not being asked to beg for clarity. You are being reminded that what is meant to be repaired must return with truth, accountability, and action. Your soulmate knows this now. The date asked them another question. If they stood in front of you tonight, what would you say? Your soulmate's breathing changed. They had imagined such a moment many times, but never aloud. They had rehearsed different versions in private. Some were defensive. Some were emotional. Some ended with them walking away because fear took control. But now, seated across from someone who had no interest in accepting half of their heart, your soulmate could no longer escape the question. What would they say to you? At first, they answered, "I do not know." But that was not true. They knew. They simply did not know whether they had the right to say it. They would tell you they had thought about you more often than you realized. They would admit that their silence was not peace. They would confess that they watched for signs of you, even while pretending not to care. They would tell you that some nights they almost reached out, but fear whispered that you had become stronger without them. They would say they are sorry for the confusion they created. They would ask whether there is still a door open, even slightly. And then, beneath everything else, they would reveal the sentence they have been most afraid to speak. No one has felt like you. The date saw this truth before your soulmate said it. They leaned forward and spoke gently. You are still choosing them in every room, even when they are not there. My child, let that truth settle within you, but do not allow it to feed pride. Let it bring understanding. Your connection has not been forgotten. Yet the deeper purpose of this message is not simply to tell you that someone misses you. It is to reveal that your soulmate reached a point last night where avoidance became more painful than honesty. The dinner continued, but its purpose had changed completely. It was no longer a date. It became a reckoning. The person across from your soulmate asked about the last real conversation you shared. They asked what went wrong. They asked why neither of you had found a way back to clarity. Your soulmate told only part of the story at first. They spoke about timing, pressure, misunderstanding, and emotional distance. But the date waited. They sensed something deeper. Finally, your soulmate admitted the truth they rarely speak: they were afraid of how deeply you affected them. With you, they could not remain hidden. You saw the parts of them they had carefully protected. You awakened feelings they could not control. And instead of trusting the connection, they stepped back from it. They thought distance would make them feel powerful again. Instead, it made them feel empty. This admission surprised even them. Sometimes a person does not understand their own actions until they hear themselves explain those actions to someone who is not emotionally involved. Last night, your soulmate heard the weakness in their excuses. They recognized how much damage fear had caused. They realized that losing you had not protected them from pain. It had only created a different kind of pain. One without closure, without honesty, and without the comfort of knowing they had tried. Then the date smiled, but it was not a romantic smile. It was the smile of someone who had finally understood the entire situation. They said, "I think I know why we were meant to meet tonight." Your soulmate waited. The restaurant lights flickered softly above them. A server passed nearby. Somewhere behind them, a song changed. And in that ordinary setting, an extraordinary truth was about to be spoken. The date said, "I was not meant to become your future. I was meant to show you that your past is not finished." Those words entered your soulmate with force. They had expected disappointment, perhaps anger, perhaps a cold ending to the evening. Instead, they received clarity. The person sitting across from them did not demand an explanation or ask to be chosen. They simply refused to participate in a story built on denial. Your soulmate felt both relieved and shaken. Relieved because they no longer had to pretend. Shaken because pretending had been the only barrier between them and the truth. The date then asked whether they still had your number. Your soulmate hesitated. That hesitation revealed more than an answer ever could. Yes, they still had it. They had never deleted it. They may have removed the conversation from view. They may have archived memories or hidden photographs. They may have acted as though they had cleared every reminder. But your contact remained. Your name remained. The pathway back had never been completely closed. The person across from them said, "Then why are you sitting here?" My child, this question followed your soulmate long after it was spoken. Why were they sitting at a table with someone else when their heart was still facing you? Why were they searching for peace in a new beginning when the old story had never received an honest ending? Why were they waiting for certainty when certainty had been living inside them all along? Your soulmate looked at their phone. Their fingers moved toward it. For one breathtaking moment, they nearly opened your contact. But fear returned. What if you did not respond? What if you had changed? What if you were angry? What if their message reopened something you had fought hard to heal? These questions stopped them. Yet the date did not pressure them. Instead, they said, do not contact them tonight unless you are ready to be honest. They deserve more than a moment of loneliness. They deserve truth. That sentence changed everything. Your soulmate understood that reaching out could not be an impulsive escape from the discomfort of the dinner. It had to come from sincerity. They could not send a vague greeting and expect you to carry the emotional weight. They could not return halfway. They could not seek reassurance without offering accountability. So they placed the phone down. But they did not dismiss the idea. They began planning what honesty would sound like. They thought about the words. They thought about the timing. They thought about you reading the message and recognizing, perhaps for the first time, that they finally understood what they had done. The dinner ended earlier than expected. There was no dramatic argument. No bitterness. No attempt to force a connection that was not present. The person across from your soulmate paid their part, stood, and offered one final piece of wisdom. Go home, they said. Decide whether your fear is more important than the person you keep carrying everywhere. Then they left. Your soulmate remained at the table alone. This was the image heaven wanted you to see. The empty chair across from them, the untouched food, the phone resting beside their hand, and your name alive within their thoughts. For several minutes, they did not move. They watched strangers pass. They listened to the distant music. They replayed the entire conversation. The truth was now too clear to bury. The date had not stolen their heart. The date had exposed where their heart had already been. With you. But there was one more shocking detail about the person they met, and your soulmate did not discover it until they were preparing to leave. Their phone lit up. A message arrived from the date. It contained only a few words at first. I need to tell you something else. Your soulmate opened the message immediately. The next sentence made their entire body go still. The person they had just met had not learned about you only through your soulmate stories. They had seen you before. Not recently, perhaps. Not in the way your soulmate first feared. But they recognized your name because your path had crossed theirs in an unexpected way. There was a connection between you and this person that neither you nor your soulmate fully understood yet. The message continued. I know who they are. Your soulmate stared at the screen. Then another message appeared. And there is something they deserve to know about why you were invited to dinner tonight. My child, this is where heaven asks you to hold steady. The dinner was not arranged as randomly as your soulmate believed. Someone had encouraged the meeting for a reason. Someone knew your soulmate was still emotionally connected to you. Someone believed that placing them across from this particular person would force a truth into the light. But the identity of the person behind the arrangement has not yet been revealed. Your soulmate left the restaurant with their heart racing. They called the date, but there was no answer. They sent a message asking what they meant. The response did not come immediately. As they walked toward their car, memories of you flooded them with unusual intensity. They remembered a conversation you once had about divine timing. You had told them that truth always arrives, even when people run from it. At the time, they had smiled and changed the subject. Last night, they finally understood. They sat inside their car but did not start the engine. The restaurant lights glowed in the rearview mirror. Their phone remained in their hand. Your contact was open now. Your name appeared on the screen, waiting beneath months of silence and unsent words. They began typing. Hey. They deleted it. I know this may be unexpected. They deleted that too. I need to tell you something. Again, they erased it. Nothing felt worthy of the truth they had just confronted. Then another message from the date arrived. This one contained a photograph. Your soulmate opened it, and the blood seemed to leave their face. The image was connected to you. It was not an intimate photograph, nor anything dangerous or shameful. It was something far more emotionally powerful, proof that the person at dinner had encountered your name before the date was ever planned. Proof that someone had been speaking about your connection behind the scenes. Proof that last night was designed to bring your soulmate to a moment of decision. Below the photograph were 7 words. You were never meant to choose me. Your soulmate read them again and again. Then the final message appeared. You were meant to finally choose the truth. At that exact moment, your soulmate looked at your name on their phone and made a decision. Not a complete decision, because fear was still present. Not an easy decision, because too much remained unresolved. But a real decision. They would no longer use other people to distract themselves from what they felt for you. They would no longer pretend the connection meant nothing. They would no longer call their silence peace. They began writing a message unlike the others. This time, they did not delete the first sentence. They wrote slowly, carefully, with a trembling honesty they had avoided for months. My dinner tonight revealed something I can no longer deny. Then they paused. They looked at the photograph again. They read the date's words one final time. And just as they were about to continue the message to you, another notification appeared, this one from the person who had secretly arranged the dinner. Your soulmate recognized the name immediately. Their expression changed from confusion to disbelief. Because the person behind last night's dinner was the last person either of you would ever have suspected. And the message they sent began with the words. Before you contact them, you need to know what they discovered about you.